This is going to be a new style of top 10 list. This is one where it's going to not necessarily be in any order. I'm going to go from 1 to 10 as opposed to 10 to 1. And I'm going to this is going to be a little bit more personal, so as opposed to this being my way of trying to analyze a certain topic and really present what I would think to be the 10 to 1, I'm going to do things a little differently here, and I hope that you guys can stay with me. And this is probably going to be something that a lot of you are going to be interested in, considering I've been doing this for nearly 5 years, and some of you may not understand why it is that I dislike some of the bands that I do. It's something where I'm able to give a lot of concrete argument whenever I either do an album review or analyze a band's discography or something like that, but I really don't get all that personal into it unless I'm doing, of course, one of my angry reviews where it seems as though I'm just going off for no reason. So it's time to do things a little bit more solidly, do things a little bit more logically, and actually speak about why some of these bands are just not my cup of tea whatsoever, and try very, very hard not to get my emotions all out of check and, try to go a little bit more professional with that. So the first band that I know that I've gotten a lot, mainly because they were one of the first bands that I ever talked shit on, is the band Slipknot. A lot of people probably wonder why Slipknot is not my cup of tea. There are some of you that were very outspoken about it, whereas others have been relatively more cool about it, accepting the fact that, opinions do differ. I think the principal reason why I didn't ever really get into this band is that after the Wait and Bleed song came out and I listened through some of the other material on the albums, I just didn't see a lot of what the hype was about. I saw the hype whenever I listened to Wait and Bleed, so far as saying that this is going to be one of the next big things, to a friend of mine through an audio cassette that I had recorded for her. And it just, for me, it didn't hit me the same way that it did for other people. And the fan base at the time was definitely one that was kind of rough and rugged, very around the edges, and it's not a fan base that for a time, and now I'm saying for a time, was not exactly very friendly to opinions to the otherwise. And I think this has something to do with a lot of the youth of that time being part of the band, really expressing a lot of disappointment that people didn't share their views, even though perhaps you were friends, either that or casually acquainted. For the band itself, as far as the musicality is concerned, they do have a pretty decent sound to them. They have a lot of things that could definitely, if honed correctly, could really be, absolutely fantastic. But it's something that it does sound a little bit too overly simplified, almost like they're going for an oversimplified death metal or something like that. I remember the one comment that was made is that it's death metal for retards, and while I do, at one point in time, kind of support that argument, it's not one that anymore I'm really all that akin to really saying. It's more so just death metal for the casual fan that wants to come in, and I wouldn't even go that far. That's definitely not what I would call the traditional scale of death metal whatsoever. It's just something that's a little bit modern, a little bit different, that it really just didn't catch on for me, and that's principally one of the main reasons why. I think the second reason why was just the fact that with each passing single, I didn't have that same experience that I did with Wait and Bleed. Wait and Bleed kind of took me by surprise. It was something that was a little bit different. It was something that was a little bit, really kind of special whenever it came out on the radio, because it was like you're hearing something this aggressive and this heavy on the radio, and then with each passing single, it's almost like that gloss wore off. And as I was starting to explore more and more during my metal journey, because you have to remember, I was like 15 years old whenever the song first came out, and it just didn't have that same luster, and I kind of started to see through it for what it was. For a lot of people, I'm sure that experience was the same, where it was something so different and so aggressive that they, of course, latched on, and they never exactly had that, moment where they had a reason not to stay latched on, because they didn't progress as far with the metal subgenre, or the metal genre, should I say, as some others did, so I can kind of understand that. The second band that I'll talk to, I'm going kind of from back to front, is Attila. I never got into Attila. I have had tons and tons and tons of people really recommend them to me, and I've just never been one to get into them because they just remind me too much of a deathcore band that's trying to be Limp Bizkit, that they're trying to be this group that's kind of all up on themselves, trying to have a little bit of a personality and a little bit of comedy to them, but it just fails really, really hard because of that tough guy persona, because of that come at me bro style, all of these things that really just, for me, whenever I listen to music, I don't need that in order to really get a pleasurable experience from it. I don't need taglines taglines. I don't need catchphrases. You don't need to brand yourself through tough and aggressive little things that you have to say. I don't want to have a band that is all focused in on, the tough guy, acronym of the week or anything like that. And to me, whenever I listened, especially to their last album, I just got bored with it way too fast. This was a gimmick that just ran its course really before the first song was even done. So this was something that was a stylistic change for me, something that I just was not into whatsoever. And then I got into all of the people attacking me for my opinions, and that was something that really, really turned me off even more so. I'm one that can take constructive criticism, somebody who can definitely understand if somebody says to me, your videos look really unprofessional because you're not green screening, or, they're really unprofessional because you just go and ah sometimes, considering I one take all of these things. But whenever you're just flat out saying, no, your opinion's wrong and you're a moron because you think Attila sucks, I want nothing to do with you. And really the band suffers too, because while I will listen to to any release that comes out after this, I probably will have a bit of a chip on my shoulder that I will have to struggle in order to get that off. That way I can be fair and balanced with it if I do in fact choose to review it, which at this point in time I do plan on doing so, because evolution of a band is still something that needs to be taken into account, because these bands that, may not exactly hit you very well the first, second, or third time, the fourth time might be the charm, or even the fifth time. You might find something that finally is able to break through and really be, something that speaks to you. Band number 3 that we're going to talk about is Blood on the Dance Floor, and I think this one's kind of obvious. Blood on the Dance Floor has kind of gotten this idea of how they're going to try to modernize hard music a little bit by using some dance motifs, by using just obscene lyrics, just terrible lyricisms, and they're doing a lot of their promotion through the internet. They're doing a lot of it through iTunes. There are some that are available in stores, but it's a rare, few and far between thing. They're doing a lot of their marketing virally, and they're able to target a lot of youth that way. And these are messages that really, for one, don't need to be, aimed towards youth whenever you consider the lyricism. And, people are kind of taking these tongue-in-cheek. I understand that, but there's going to be other people that aren't going to do that. They're going to mold their lives around that, and it's going to be something that's going to really affect them in the long run. Now I sound like a concerned parent, and I guess it makes sense. I'm close to 30 years old. I should have kids by now, but I don't. However, this is a band that also just has a terrible image. They have an absolutely terrible way of representing themselves, and they're doing a lot of things that are just absolute no-nos in the business. This is not something where you need to attack other genres of music. You don't need to attack people that dislike you. You need to take the constructive criticism just as much as you should receive it. This is not something where every single person is going to like you, but getting off or acting like you get off whenever people hate you, that gives you an excuse to, physically attack them or verbally assault them or anything like that, is not necessarily the way to go. Now you might say, well, Cover Killer Nation, you verbally attack a lot of bands, and, you seem to be doing alright, or, you should eat your own words. And, well, I have. If you've noticed over the past couple of, months, perhaps even to the past year, I've definitely calmed a lot. It's something where it's only come out every so often, and I've tried to control it a little bit more. Hence a video like this one. Plus, Blood on the Dance Floor fans, oh my god, you guys are some of the most clouded individuals that I've ever seen. If you really want to see what I mean, ladies and gentlemen, there's a video link that I will have in the description box, and maybe somewhere on this video around my head, that will really prove that. Concurrently with that, number 4, Black Veil Brides. This is another modern band. I've done 3 modern and 1 that's kind of from the past, and this is one where I can kind of understand what they're going for, and I can kind of understand that they do have a little bit of talent. Their guitar player definitely has a lot of skill. So, musically, I just find it to be a little bit drab. I find it a little bit passé. And, they're trying to do this, like, glam rock Motley Crue type thing, only they're, doing a little bit of different messaging with it. It's something where I don't know, it just doesn't exactly resonate with me. So once again, kind of like Slipknot, it's a band that more so just doesn't resonate with me as much as it is something where I just flat out hate and despise them. They definitely have a little bit of skill, but it's just skill that seems to be appropriated in the wrong way, in the wrong fashion. This is a guitar player that easily could be in a thrash band, a very Trivium style band, or something even more than that, and really kind of set the world on fire. I almost feel as though this guy is going to be limited the longer that he sticks around with the Black Veil Brides. He's just going to kind of be painted into this little corner stylistically, and he's going to have some freedom to go out on his own with another band and perhaps expand that horizon a little bit. Now, he's releasing a solo album, so we'll see how that goes. Number 5 is Limp Bizkit. Now, if you've watched the Limp Bizkit videos from an eternity ago, you know that at one point in time, I liked Limp Bizkit. Yeah, Significant Other was a really good album. It's just that it was a great first half of the album, whereas the second half is instantly forgettable. $3 Bill Y'all wasn't a bad album also. Kind of like Korn, whenever the whole nu metal thing started happening, it was something different. So immediately whenever you listen to it and you have that difference of, different sound to it, or just that difference idea, it's something that kind of catches you and you're just like, this is kind of cool. This is a new little take. It's a little bit simpler, but they're still able to convey a lot of emotion and energy into something that's extremely simple and really kind of carries some weight. However, after that, everything just went downhill in a hurry, and I started to watch Limp Bizkit just sort of spiral out of control, and Fred Durst just become this intolerable, uncontrollable douchebag that just seemed to become the poster child for what not to do whenever you grow up. This is a guy who's still talking about the bullies that he had in high school whenever he's, rich, and he's still, rolling the trademark New York Yankees hat. And it's just one of those things where there's some point in time in your life where you kind of have to grow up a little bit. Even with them signing to Young Money Records, I kind of see that same thing. It's almost like Fred wants to continue this youthful ambition ride by signing to a hip-hop, hip-hop, label that has young right there in the title, and it's just going to keep him young. The sad part about this is that Wes Borland is actually a pretty damn awesome guitar player. I recently heard about him being on stage while the rest of the band was taking a break, him and the drummer, and they just started cranking out some old classics like Metallica's Master of Puppets, Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, and a couple of other different tracks, and Fred didn't know the words to a lot of them. But yet, here's Wes and their drummer, just thumping along like it's nothing. It's kind of cool whenever you have that, but at the same time, whenever you see what band he's in, you think to yourself, man, the things that you could probably do. The things that you could probably do. 6. Avenged Sevenfold. This is actually a big misconception. A lot of people think that I just absolutely hate Avenged Sevenfold, whenever that's not really true at all. It's not that I hate the band. In fact, I actually kind of, dig them. They're not that bad. It's just that this is a band that's been horrifically overplayed for me. This is one where it's kind of been in your face for so long, and for me it was in my face in like 5 different formats, that it has just grown really, really dull and tiresome. It's almost like what happens whenever you have a favorite song on the radio, and it becomes your favorite song right whenever it gets really, really big. You hear the song 15 times a day, and it's getting to that point where after a couple of days it's starting to get old, but you still kind of find something cool with it. But then after the course of about 3 or 4 years of them doing that, man, oh man, makes you want to just pull out a gun and shoot the song in the face. Yeah, shooting an inanimate object. Good luck with that. This is a band that definitely was 100% all based around that for me. They're not that bad. They've actually shifted their style up a little bit. They're very, very good live. They have a fantastic live image. I just feel that they're a little bit big for their britches at times. I think that Sinister Gates is, halfway decent guy, but Zachy needs to shut his fucking mouth, or M Shadows, or who the hell knows. This is a band that basically on Hail to the King paid homage to their favorite bands, but they paid homage a little bit too well. They really were kind of a little too close with some of these songs. It was sounded like they were direct riffs from other songs that they really enjoyed, such as Sad But True by Metallica and stuff like that. And this is something that was being praised, and anybody who was kind of talking ill of it or, really spoke poorly of it were immediately idiots. Avenged Sevenfold can do no wrong. I'm not a guy who really gets off at, bands that have fan bases that say they can do no wrong. I was like that at one point in time with Opeth, but I know that they can do wrong. I know that there are some songs that are just not as good. Heritage is an album that's kind of a dividing line for a lot of Opeth fans, but with Avenged Sevenfold, it's not that I hate this group, it's just the fact that they were overplayed for me. It was way tired out, and I saw that the fan base did have some problems with it at times. They were one of those bands that, you can kind of get ushered into metal, but most of them would not move past Avenged Sevenfold. So it's almost like, while it can be an ushering point in the metal, it can also just as quickly be a roadblock, which is good for the band because it keeps their sales up and it keeps their image looking really good. But for the overall genre and helping out everybody else, it's not really a good thing at all. Man, what number are we even on? I don't even remember. I think we're on number 7. Oh, man. Number 7, let's talk about a really old band. Let's talk about Kiss. I was never that big of a fan of Kiss. It was not a band that I ever really got into. I collect their records. I don't collect their CDs because the records are more cool than the CDs, at least in my opinion. And really, this is a band that I should kind of be into because they used a lot of theatrics and everything like that to help shape modern rock and things like that to what it is today. At least it's what I've been told for 20 to 30 years. Overall, some of the songs are good and catchy and everything like that, but it's just an inconsistency problem for me. You know, a lot of it is just, you know, fair to decent rock songs, and they're not really metal songs. They're not metal songs at all. And aside from that, it's just about it. You know, this is a band that, you know, I just don't have all that much of a feeling for. And perhaps at one point in my life, I kind of dug them. But this is one where it's never elevated to that status where I can say that I like them. It's never been to a status where I can say that I would go out of my way to listen to, you know, a couple albums of Kiss one afternoon. It's just not something that's for me. And if anybody thinks that it's anything more than that, then you're wrong. I hate to say it. Let's go concurrently with that with number 8 with AC/DC. AC/DC I actually really like, especially the Bon Scott era material, so this is definitely a misconception. Just because I haven't touched this band with a discography review or even just an album review doesn't mean anything. It just means that, you know, everybody and their mother's going to do it. You know, Back in Black was such a huge album. It's one of the best-selling albums of all time. There's absolutely no reason for me to touch it. There's no reason for me to even, you know, think about touching it because everybody knows about this album. There's no reason for somebody to listen or watch an album review about Back in Black whenever they've probably heard half of the CD just based on the radio airplay alone. And, you know, after that whole Bon Scott incident where he passed away, Brian Johnson, while he's a very capable and charismatic vocalist, the band has kind of gotten into this very similar cycle of releasing similar sounding songs and similar sounding albums over and over and over again ever since 1980. And whenever you have a band that's been doing essentially the same damn thing for 30 years, yeah, it's a formula that's working, don't get me wrong, and yeah, it still produces some kick-ass rock songs, but it's just not something that, you know, really works for me. I need a little bit more of the explorative side, and I saw that and I heard that with the Bon Scott era material, so this is kind of a yin and yang problem here. Not so much something that's a problem that I just hate the band, it's just that I prefer one style over the other, you know, one vocalist over the other. 2 more to go, and we are home free. Number 9, Metallica. I have to actually mention Metallica. Even though I've done a discography, even though I've talked about some of the albums twice, people still think I hate Metallica simply because of the comments that I made about Saint Anger and the comments that I made about Lulu. Those are 2 bad albums. In fact, if anything, people attack me whenever I talk about Metallica and liking Load and Reload, because I actually do kind of dig those albums. They're weaker than some of the others, don't get me wrong, but they're still very, very solid albums for what they were trying to do. That blues infusion really helped this album, these albums, should I say, a good bit. Garage Incorporated is one of my favorite covers albums of all time, if not the number one, and Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning are among 2 of my favorite albums of all time, period. So I don't understand why people think that I hate Metallica just because I hated Saint Anger and I hated Lulu. And I think we even determined in 2013, whenever I did the whole discography, that it's not so much that I hate Saint Anger, it's just the fact that at the time, it really sucked. And now whenever you listen to it 10 years later, after all the other crap that's come out following Saint Anger, then you start to realize the subtle genius to it. You realize that this is a band that made something so bad, but they were saying to us almost, you know, ethereally, listen to this in 10 years and recognize that this is actually a whole lot better than where things are going. And they would have been right. They would have been exactly right, because it really is the case. Lulu is a completely different story, and while it's still sad to me that Lou Reed is dead, the album still sucks, and the album will continue to suck. And the fact that I, you know, broke my own promise and listened to it all over again and basically found nothing better about it, in fact, I found a few more things to be worse about it in 2013, really just kind of proved to me that this was just a bad experiment gone horridly wrong. But that's all the more it is. Do I hate Metallica because of Napster? No. How can I hate Metallica whenever I do James Hetfield karaoke? That ain't just because it's easy. It's because I respect James Hetfield. It's because I respect the band. Even though I called Lars Ulrich a tennis racket, I respect him too. And even though I called Kirk Hammett a masturbating houseplant, I still think that he's a damn good guitar player and worthy of a lot of praise. Ladies and gentlemen, we're home free here with number 10, which is a subgenre as opposed to just one band, and that subgenre is Deathcore. people think that I flat out hate deathcore. They think I loathe it. I get onto camera for minutes at a time and just enjoy hating and bashing deathcore, hating and bashing their favorite bands, much as though I would enjoy a steak dinner. Wow. No. It's not that I hate deathcore. It's not that I hate deathcore at all. In fact, whenever it first came out, much like nu metal, much like whenever I was talking about Limp Bizkit and nu metal, it had that air of something different. It had that air of being a little bit different than some of the things that we'd heard before. It was a new and budding scene, and so you kind of look at it and you kind of listen to it, and you're like, okay, I can kind of understand where they're going with that. I think the biggest problem that I have with this is that they've kind of painted themselves a little bit into a corner. It's something where this style, this idea that we've heard for the past couple of years, ever since its true inception point, has kind of been the bread and butter calling card of this whole entire subgenre, as opposed to it being something that goes outside of itself and really goes out of its way in order to try to add something new to the mix, to give it a little bit more of a boost point. And really with subgenres, that's one of the key problems that you're going to get into, because if you do a little bit more, if you go outside of the realm, they're going to add certain tags to it, and they're going to try to make a sub-subgenre out of it, and the whole thing just gets way too goddamn confusing. So instead of infusing elements of metalcore and having it still be deathcore, or having infusings of symphonic metal or thrash metal, they're going to just call it thrashcore or symphonic deathcore. It's just one of these things where it gets absolutely out of control, ridiculous, super crazy, stupid, and it really leaves deathcore kind of painted in this corner if you want it to be pure deathcore. Also, I'm not a huge fan of hardcore style breakdowns. Every one or two songs would be alright, but 12 tracks on one album and each one has a breakdown, give me a fuck break. Songs no longer become events at live shows. It's just an excuse to mosh all times. And while you would think that would be something that's critical for metal, considering, you know, moshing and headbanging is something that made thrash popular and things like that, it really doesn't have that same critical impact or that critical effect. It's not like whenever Lamb of God takes stage, it encourages a circle pit or a wall of death or something like that. It's something where it's almost like through these songs they're encouraging these things all the time, and it really reduces their value. Also, whenever you think about bands that have been in here, there's been a little bit of stylistic evolution, but not very much. And once again, it goes back to the whole idea I was mentioning before, where if you shift your style up all that much, it's going to ruin what pure deathcore is and transform it into something completely different. Suicide Silence has actually shown a little bit of stylistic difference, and I think that that's going to only continue with their new album, considering they have a new singer that's going to bring a little bit of a new environment to it. And Whitechapel, their very first album, Somatic Defilement, actually was really, really good, and then the band just kind of denigrated and downsided itself throughout the career. So this is one of those things where I don't hate deathcore. I'm still going to probably look at a couple of these albums, and I should probably review a couple more deathcore albums, simply to see if I can illuminate myself as this being true. Either that, or to be proved wrong and be surprised, because it's kind of like what I mentioned about Attila. I got to keep listening to this stuff, because if I don't, then I really could be stopping short of that classic album, or that album that absolutely would change my mind on a band, if not the entire subgenre. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are 10 bands, or I guess 9 bands in one subgenre that people think I really, really hate. I could have talked about a lot of other bands too. You know, the Sleeping with Sirens, the Pierce the Veils and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. But I have not really talked to, or I haven't talked about any of their albums to the point where it really deserves it, and I've not done a discography review or anything like that. Maybe after I do something like that, I would be more privy to do that, and plus the fans are going to be fun with that, believe me, because it's just one of those things where, as opposed to them offering some pretty good arguments, they are more prone to just be like, hey, motherfucker, you fat fucking piece of fuck. I can't fucking believe you don't fucking like insert fucking band name here, because fucking fuck you. And that gets to be a little much. There's a lot of people out there that think that I hate bands, but don't offer a very good counter-argument as to why I should like them. And that's one of the principal reasons why I can't take a lot of these motherfuckers seriously. Simply because they don't have the capability of actually defending their band through either the musical context, the textures, the layers. It's always something that's all about them. It's very personal, it's very me, as opposed to being like, well, whenever they do this in this style, or, well, this lyric is actually talking about this, and presenting arguments that way. It's instead something that's very internally focused, as opposed to being very externally focused. I could also talk about A Day to Remember, but why? I mean, I did a, discography, band review on them, or whatever the hell it was, and, yeah, I got a little bit off the handle and shit like that, but Day to Remember is just a band that's not really in my, cup of tea. It's not in my wagon. That's the reason why I don't talk about a lot of these other groups, these pop punk, emo core, whatever the hell it is groups, mainly because I kind of, the boat was already left whenever I was there, because it's something that came after I was, grown up on stuff like that and everything like that. It's almost like the boat was there, I saw it was on the boat, and I was like, I don't want to fucking be on that boat. So I didn't get on the boat, and the boat left, and I was okay with that. So that's kind of the reason why I don't touch them a lot. I think there are other people that could definitely touch that a lot better and give it a fair just due, and really be able to differentiate between some of the different groups that are in that subcategory. So if you're expecting me to do that, I would not. I don't expect me to do that, because I probably won't. But there you go. In the comments, are there any bands that you think that I personally hate, or that you have seen fans say that I hate, that I haven't covered here? And maybe if there's enough of them, I will do a second one of these, and I will explain what my feelings are on those bands as well. Thank you very much. I will see you guys next time. That's all I got.